Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. I'm your host, David Steele, and on this show, I'm always talking about films, new world, and starting the conversation about them again, or in some case, continuing a conversation. And we're going to be talking about all different kinds of films. So today, I actually saw a tweet um, yesterday, and I can't. So I saw this, and I said, I can't believe it's already two, and I just blew my mind. So I'm talking about the Batman. Now, the Batman. This has always been a film that I remember going to see in the theater. I think I actually saw this two or three times in the theater, and I got to say, it was a remarkable, remarkable film for what it was. Um, it was different. It was fresh. It was just really, really well put together on a number of different levels. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, guys. I'm going to talk about the 5 reasons why the Batman is really, arguably, one of the best Batman films. When I walked out of seeing this movie, I was really not only blown away by it, but I was more of which is the better movie, The Dark Knight or The Batman? And everybody has, by the way, everybody has their favorite Batman, whether it's Michael Keaton, whether it's Val Kilmer, whether it's George Clooney, whoever it is. And this was Robert Pattinson's first attempt at it. And we had always known him as an actor that, was doing smaller films. Of course, he was in the Twilight series back, you know, in his early days. And then, so this was a major role and a major character. This is one of DC's premium, top notch characters. Um, because we've seen, and the last time that we had seen the Batman on screen, besides Justice League, was really Christopher Nolan's iteration. And, you know, I mean, the Dark Knight will always go down as one of the greatest films of all time. Oh, wait, was an amazing year. I mean, we had Iron Man, which, by the way, guys, starting here on the channel in March, I'm going to be doing something called Marvel March. So on Thursday, or actually tomorrow, I'm going to be doing Iron Man. So I'm going to be doing a whole retrospective about Iron Man and talking about that. But back to the Batman. It was just, '08 was a huge year. You had the Dark Knight, you had Iron Man, you had a couple others. And that was really a big film. So this movie in itself really was a test. And Patterson, I thought, did a fantastic job. I mean, for what it was, the story was great. And by the way, guys, like I said, I'm going to get into the 5 reasons why I think the Batman is a film that is one of the greatest Batman films out there. I mean, you ask me tomorrow, I might switch my answer. Which is better, the Dark Knight or the Batman? But for anyways, so let's get into the nitty gritty of it. As always, guys, I'm going to do a little bit of the intro about the film. This may not be the most, isn't the sexiest stuff in the world, but it is a necessary thing just to refresh about what the film was and how it, came to be. So, as I said, this is turning 2, or just turned 2 yesterday. So this was released in over 4,400 theaters. I mean, now you got to understand something too. This is a film that, I mean, we went through a pandemic a couple of years ago, right? So this was one of the first films that really jump-started this whole resurgence we had. So the opening weekend was $134 million. It was amazing. Actually, it was about 36% of its total gross. It ended up grossing about $375 million, but it was just incredible. $248.5 million worldwide. It was a huge debut for it. It actually debuted number 1 in 73 of the 74 international countries that opened it. So take that into account. So after its run, this was one of the first films too, guys, that you got to remember that the theatrical window had been cut. So, um, anybody who's not familiar with a theatrical window, real quick, it's how long a movie would stay in a theater. So back about 20 or 30 years ago, a um, you would have a movie stay in 6 months, a year even. Okay, that wasn't out of the question. And then what you ended up having was they decided they wanted to, that was during the time of home video sales and everything else. And they cut the window back. So when they cut the window back, they cut it to 90 days. So any movie up to a couple years ago, you would see would be in the theaters for 90 days. So if you wanted to go see it over and over and over, you could. And that was great. Then once the pandemic happened, okay, everything changed. Now, Trolls, one of the Trolls movies was the first one to do this, and it was only in theaters for 45 days or 6 weeks. So, what ended up happening was all of the theatrical window, all of the theatrical movies that came to theaters are now in movies or in theaters for only 6 weeks. That's it. So, to put this in consideration for you guys, this debuted domestically, okay, on March 4th, okay, of 2022. It went to streaming, it went to HBO Max, okay, April 18th. That's only 6 weeks. And it still made as much as it did in the theater. So that's something to keep in mind too. And of course, now today, I mean, everything goes to, streaming lickety split. What was I just reading? Dune 2. Or no, it wasn't Dune 2. It was some movie that's coming out um, in a couple of days on streaming, and it just opened the theaters, right? Anyways, so it had a production budget of $200 million. And by the way, it was well done. This was a budget that was a well spent budget. You knew where it went. So this movie ended up finishing, believe it or not, 58th all time domestic. Now, think about that for a minute. 58th. Now, that doesn't sound that good, but 58th domestic and 112th highest grossing movie ever of all the movies ever made. 102 just missed being, I mean, that's incredible. It made an insane amount of money, and it should have. So at that point, so it finished with about $765 million total, which is, incredible. So this was written and directed by Matt Reeves, who of course is known for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Ward of the Planet of the Apes, and Cloverfield. And so I believe as a matter of fact, I believe he's directing the new, um, Planet of the Apes movie coming out this summer. So, that's his baby at this point. So and so this was actually nominated for 3 Oscars: Best Hair and Makeup, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects. And it didn't win any of them, but you could definitely tell. So now that we've got all that out of the way, quick recap of the movie. Of course, it starts Robert Pattinson as the Batman. You have Zoe Kravitz playing Catwoman, Jeffrey Wright playing Commissioner Gordon, and Paul Dano. And this is just it's an amazing cast, to say the least. And so from left to right here, you have I forget his name on the far left. Forgive me for that. Then you have Andy Serkis, who played a very good role as Alfred. I mean, it was an aging Alfred, but it was different. Okay. Then of course you have Patterson, Zoe Kravitz, who's that little tiny thing in the middle, Paul Dano, Jeffrey Wright to his right, and of course you have the director Matt Reeve all the way over to the far right. And it was just an amazing, stellar cast all the way through. So, okay. So those are the stars. And the film is basically the synopsis. when a sadistic serial killer, begins murdering key political figures in Gotham, Batman is forced to investigate the city's hidden corruption and question his family's involvement. So that's the synopsis. Hello, Deadpool. I'm doing well. Thank you. I hope you're doing well too. I just saw that this had turned 2, and I was kind of blown away. And I I remember seeing this in theaters, and I wanted to do a little quick stream about it. I shouldn't say quick stream. So I'm going to give you the 5 reasons why I think this film is one of the best films, one of the best Batman films. So perfect timing. We're about to get started. So I just finished the intro. So the first reason was the aesthetic. So Greg Fraser, okay, is a well-known cinematographer and DP around Hollywood. And as a matter of fact, he just finished up the amazing um, Dune Part 2. So anybody who's seen Dune Part 2, and by the way, guys, I did a whole spoiler cast on there. I will leave the the link up there in the description for you guys, so you guys can go watch that. So he's done he's done Dune. He did Dune Part 2. Okay. Um, he's done The Creator. He's done, of course, Rogue One too. So one of the most prominent features in the Batman's aesthetic is his dark and gritty tone. And by the way, it's raining all the time in Gotham, so you could definitely tell that. So, I mean, just this look here, right? The film takes place in a version of Gotham City that's plagued by crime and corruption, and the overall mood is one of darkness and despair. The cinematography really reflects this, using the shadows and low light to create a sense of unease and danger. The aesthetic is further enhanced by a muted color palette with heavy emphasis on black and blues and grays. So you can tell really like how uneasy it is and everything to that extent. Another key aspect of the Batman's aesthetic is the practical set design and the practical effects. And as I said, this had a budget of $200 million, but it was well worth. They spent it very well. The film uses real sets, okay, and of course, if you guys are really interested in watching all the backstory about this, there is a behind the scenes making of the Batman, and it tells where they how they filmed certain things and what they did. And so rather than relying on green screens, okay, they wanted to create a sense of realism and immersion. This is evident in the Batman's action sequences, which are choreographed and shot very well and organically and grounded. I'm going to get to the action sequences later because that's a whole other aspect about this film. So it's also characterized by the attention to detail and commitment to stay true to the source material. The Batman pays very close attention to the design of the costume, which is based on the comic book character. The costume is heavily armored, and it features multiple gadgets and features, which helps the Batman, become more formidable. And of course, we have several different villains in this. We've got the Penguin, we've got Cat Riddler, and of course, we have the Riddler, who are designed. Their comic book characters and their counterparts are used, and I mean, going so far as the aesthetic. I mean, this is one of the greatest shots of the film. If this doesn't put you in a comic book setting, I don't know what would. Okay, and it was just an amazing shot, and it was just unbelievable in how they did that. And it was just, I mean, they took right out of a comic book. So I mean, just everything about it. So Fraser did a remarkable job with this. So that is, that's the aesthetic. I mean, like I said, this shot here is just unbelievable. So the aesthetic had really a lot to do with how good this film was. And by the way, guys, this was a 3-hour movie. And, I'll get into my review of it much later, but it's one of those things where the first 2 acts, it was just, it's a crime drama, really. it really is a crime drama. And you don't know, how the Batman's going to be able to solve this. And then you have you know, the twist there with Selena. And so how is she going to play into everything? And it's just well done. Okay. So let's move on to um, the next item. And that's perspective. So the Batman really created a whole different um, perspective. Okay. And it's good for many reasons. First and foremost, it takes a unique look of the character of Batman and offers a fresh perspective rather than retelling of the same origin stories that has been done countless times. It introduces a new version of Batman in the early stages of his crime fighting career, which was fantastic. So, this is a year two Batman. So, even in the very first 10 minutes of the film, okay, you get what you get is you get the voiceover, okay, and you get not only do you get the voiceover, but you see the things that he's saying when he closes the book. He says, "I'm still trying to figure things out." Right? When he closes the book, it says year two. So we're getting a year two Batman. This isn't like an aged, grisly Batman for like the beginning of the Dark Knight Rises, for example, where he's been out of the game for so many years and he has to come back. That being said, it's a completely different and fresh look of the Batman. Zoe Kravitz is fire her chemistry. Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just what they are able to put together is incredible. And that is really a major part. Not only is all these things I'm going to tell you, but their chemistry, because you can have all the explosions and all the loud things you want, but if there's no chemistry between your hero and your protagonist, your love interest, it's not there. And so she did an absolutely incredible job. So, but this is a different Batman. This is a year two Batman. And I loved that we're seeing a different perspective. Um, so that was something. Another reason why the Batman's plot is great is that it balances action and drama perfectly, and it does. It really does. We have a lot of action sequences, and as I said, I'll get to those in a couple of minutes. But we also have drama. A major player, I won't say major player, Andy Serkis did a phenomenal job as Alfred. Okay, his butler that was basically trying to get him to see things from a different look. Um, so that was done really well. While there are plenty of high octane fights and thrilling scenes, the story also delves into the character's emotional and psychological struggles. This adds depth and complexity to the plot, allowing the audience to connect, and it does. And that's the thing. Once again, we hear it from even the Batman himself trying to figure things out. Of course, we have Selena's character. I mean, she's emotionally involved because of her friend. A lot of different things. Um, and then even the Penguin, right? There, he's involved with. I mean, he doesn't like Falcone too much, right? But he has to follow him because it's. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me a little of the original 1989 Batman, where you had Jack's character, Jack Napier, okay, and then you had uh, Pounce's character, and he didn't like him too much. And that's the thing about this movie. This movie draws a lot. I mean, if you take this movie, another reason why this is me talking, this draws so many different similarities from so many different Batman movies. So the first and foremost similarity would be, as I said, the Falcone character to the Penguin. The Penguin didn't like him too much, and we see what happens to him at the end, right? Go back to the 1989 Batman, where Jack Napier is having to work for Pounce's character, and he eventually kills him, right? That's the first one. The second similarity, okay, would be, the back in the 89 Batman again, okay, you had Bruce Wayne slash Batman and Vicky Vale. Now, Vicky Vale was the love interest, and yet they were really good together, but he eventually, he wouldn't let her in, right? That was the whole secret. Then, on top of all that kind of layer, then you had all the little nuances. For example, they had the statue in one of the offices from the Batman. I mean, they even had it in Arkham Knight, which I thought was kind of cool. But that statue was there, and it drew many similarities to like the Dark Knight. Okay, the Dark Knight. I mean, look at the interrogation scene. I mean, everybody's seen that incredible scene in the Dark Knight when Batman's interrogating the Joker in the police station, and then he takes it, draws it right out of there, and guess what? It's almost plot point for plot point, right? And it's so well done. Um, and just the villain. So we'll get to that in a couple of minutes, though. So, but as I said, so that is the different perspective really added something to it, and I think that is a major key, okay, to how seeing a year two Batman and seeing what they were able to do with it really worked. Okay, so let's move on to the third, okay, of the five reasons why I think this is a really top notch film, okay, and that is the look at trauma. This looks at trauma differently, okay, and so um, we have trauma on both sides, right? We have trauma on Bruce Wayne's side and the Riddler side. So Bruce Wayne begins his journey as an intensely traumatic experience we've seen over and over again. We have, okay, witnessing the murder of his parents changed the 8-year-old, sending him down a path of vigilante vengeance to inspire terror in Gotham's criminals. In the film, we don't see the actual event, but we do get hints into the depth of Bruce's trauma. He's deeply depressed and detached from his life, and he almost wants to die. It's like he has a death wish. And this is what he's telling Alfred: I don't care about my life as long as Gotham is safe. And nothing can pull him from that place. His few interactions with the son of the mayor, whose father is murdered in the opening scene, shows Bruce recognizing the hurt himself that he experienced. And this is genius. This is absolutely genius, because we don't need to see his parents getting shot. We know his parents got shot, okay? But that scene when he's walking into the crime scene and he's looking around and then he looks at the sun and his eyes, when you're wearing a mask, okay, you have to, I mean, you can even go so far as to say this for Tom Hardy in The Dark Knight Rises. Your eyes have to show the expression, right? So his eyes, when his mask is on, his eyes really are the portal into him. And when it's genius what Matt Reeves does here, when he's able to have him look at the boy and know, and he doesn't say a word to him, but he says in his eyes, I know what you're going through, son. I've been there. And he can only say that as his Batman. He can't say that as Bruce Wayne. But the trauma he goes through and the trauma he knows that that child is feeling at that time is not only is it brutal, but it's one of those things where he can relate and it makes the character relatable without much or any dialogue. And then you take a look at the flip side of the Riddler, right? Now, the Riddler is somebody that he's gone through trauma too, right? He's gone through trauma too. And I'm going to get to him in a minute, but here is somebody else that's been victimized constantly. And so you have trauma on both sides, right? And one is, does something with it, and is fighting for justice and good and trying to clean up the streets. And the other one uses his brains, because he's smarter than the average bear. Okay, he uses it for his advantage. He uses it to commit crimes. He uses it for bad things. So you have two both very intelligent people. And by the way, that's something else that this movie really touched upon, okay? Was the world's greatest detective. We always talk about Batman as the world's greatest detective, right? Well, you get to see it here because he's solving all of his riddles, and Alfred's helping him and everything else. And that's something else, that this is a different Batman, right? So not only are you having a year two Batman, but he doesn't have any superpowers. It's funny. You go back to that line in Justice League where Barry asks Bruce Wayne, played by Ben Affleck at the time. He says, "So remind me what your superpower is," and he says, "I'm rich." But it's one of those things where he doesn't have any. He's got the greatest gadgets in the world, right? But he doesn't. You know, so he is now turning into the world's greatest detective. So it's juxtaposition there. Um, but yeah, it's just one of those things where it's so well done, and um, so really, when you look at it, there's trauma on both sides with Batman and the Riddler. So, um, okay, so that is the third of the five. Okay, we're going through this kind of quick. So, moving on to the Riddler. The Riddler, one of the top tier villains, Batman villains. I mean, the Joker is always the arch enemy. Okay, um, but the Riddler is right up there. The Riddler is right up there, and so we've seen the Riddler before. We've seen a playful Riddler in, even the Adam West series. We've seen a kind of playful Riddler, if you will, in Batman and Robin, played by Jim Carrey, who is over the top. This is a different villain. This is the same kind of villain that Heath Ledger portrayed as the Joker. So beyond that, okay, the Riddler provides backstory, giving us the emotional motivation behind his choices and targeting the wealthy elite as part of his plan. So Matt Reeve said he wanted a very grounded foe for Batman. Okay, completely different than what you'd seen before. The costume is partially designed by the Zodiac Killer. Okay, as you can clearly see here. Okay, this is right out of. I mean, that's the Zodiac Killer on the right, and that's the Joker on the left. Or I'm sorry, the Riddler on the left. Incredible design. Because he wanted him to be menacing. So, also the level of violence is ratcheted up. Okay, there is no, I mean, even when he's taking the tape and he wraps, I mean, once again, going back to that first scene, he wraps his head in masking tape, right? Going back to the trauma for a moment, he does tell us that he was raised in the Wayne Foundation orphanage. Okay, he describes rats gnawing at the children packed in overcrowded bedrooms and babies dying because of the freezing temperatures. So once again, he's telling us what his trauma was. He's telling us what he went through. And this is why he became this way. That's enough trauma already for any original origin villain story, and certainly enough to harbor some hate toward those who he deemed responsible. In this case, the wealthy and the elite. Okay? And this scene here, the interrogation scene, I was going back to talk about it earlier. Incredible scene. Because we're going into this. I mean, the first time I saw this, I had a flashback to the Dark Knight. I really did. Because I went, and I kind of got where Matt Reeves was going. I went, oh my God, he's pulling these things out of different Batman films. And that's the genius. And we see that, I mean, he says, you know, um, oh, you didn't see what was happening? Oh, I gave you too much credit. Oh, you're going to see what's going on here in a couple minutes. And the Batman, of course, he's on the other side of the glass. What did you do? What did you do? And that's when he starts singing. And that's the other thing, too. It builds tension. All of these things, and I'm going to talk about the action sequences here in a couple minutes, but all of these things, they build tension. So it starts very low key and then goes up and up, and then just it comes to a head. And eventually, what we see is, of course, all the explosions around the docks, the bay, and all the flooding starts happening in Gotham City. And but this scene in itself is just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. His portrayal of the Riddler is rivals. I think it rivals Heath Ledger's. I mean, Ledger was amazing and it was grounded. That's the only one you could really tell that because all of the other villains are corny, right? Like the Riddler in Batman and Robin or Two Face, or I mean the Joker in '89's Batman was kind of over the top. I mean, fantastic portrayal, but it was still over the top. And the other thing is, this is only the second time we've seen the Riddler. We've seen the Joker so many times. I mean, he's got a solo film, he's got another one coming out here in October, but we've seen the Joker in how many times? But the Riddler is like that second tier type of villain. Paul Dano did a phenomenal job with it, and he should definitely be commended for it. So let's talk about the last scene, or not the last scene, but um, the last reason why I think this is a phenomenal film. And I'm talking about the action sequences. The action sequences were so well done, always building tension and then just exploding no matter what it was. So going back to the interrogation scene. Now, look, this wasn't really an action sequence, but it did build a lot of tension because even the banter, right? And then, of course, you had the explosions that kind of flooded Gotham City, but still. So there was something to be said there. Um, it comes out hot. It really does. It comes out hot with the train station sequence with the thugs, and I can only imagine how many people were smiling when he says, the thug says, well, "Who are you?" And he's like, instead of because we've all heard it before, whether it's you know Batman holding the Joker up, he's like, "I'm Batman," or in the Batman Begins where he pulls the guy up, he's like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm Batman." So it basically just says, "A vengeance," and it's like, okay, you knew it was a different Batman at that point, and that I can only imagine how many people were smiling when that happened. So next you had the color bomb, right? You had that bomb to where it really that was another scene that built a lot of tension, right? Um, so that was another scene that built a lot of tension, and because of course you had the funeral scene, and then you had the car come in, and then everybody clears out. But this scene in general, okay? So there's a race against time. So one of the things that build tension up, okay, is time. So when you have a bomb that is looking, whether it's it's speed where the bus can't go below 55, or you have like Goldfinger, either, with a nuclear bomb going to blow up the Fort Knox or anything. When you have a bomb, that immediately sets tension, okay? Because what it does is they have to race against the clock to stop the bomb from going off. So when this is what Matt Reeves does in his genius, okay? He basically he says, look, if you answer these three questions, you know, I'll free you. And so he, Batman gives him the answers. And then, of course, that, for those 2.5 minutes, you see the clock. That's something else, too, about the collar. You see the clock always counting down, you know. And then, of course, the explosion happens and it blows him back. Another fantastic way of building tension. So the DA gets killed. Then you had the police station with Gordon and um, the Batman. And so what does he do? He shoots up they stage a fight and be like, look, head up to the roof. I'll talk to you later. I mean, once again, in a very calm setting. And then, of course, a fight ensues and then he shoots up to the top of the station, you know? So once again, tension building and everything else. Gordon says to the chief, "Look, let me just give me a minute with this guy." So there's something else there where he really was building tension. And then finally, I mean, you have probably the most epic car chase of all time, and the music. And so when he crashes and the car crashes, and we see it from Batman's POV, or I should say Riddler's POV, upside down. One of the most amazing shots. And this is anybody who remembers the trailers, okay? This was how the first trailer ended. And I mean, once again, tension, right? We have Batman chasing the Penguin, and we think he gets away, and then he jumps through the explosion and the fire, and the guy's like, "Oh my god, it got through!" And then, of course, Batman fires something, the car flips, and then we see the car flip 2 or 3 times and then land, and that's the next shot. You see how Michael Giordano did not get nominated for best score is beyond me here. It was an outstanding score. So, I mean, this is the same guy who's worked on Spider-Man No Way Home, Star Trek, of course, the original, I won't say the original, but the first remake with Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, and Rogue One. And it was just an incredible, incredible scene. And the action sequences are just second to none. And this is what I'm talking about when you mix up the drama and we have the character development and everything else with the action. And when you have that, you have a fantastic movie. And as I said before, just seeing how they filmed it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And they did this in one of the first takes, too. So, the action was just out of sight. It was out of sight good. So, an amazing movie, well deserved. And I guarantee you that's going to be easily in the top 2 as far as most anticipated movies of next year. I mean, I think Superman is going to be in there. It's probably going to be the number 1 most anticipated film in 2025, but the Batman Part 2 is right there. And we know who the villain's going to be and everything else. It's going to be unbelievable. And that's why the Batman is incredible. Now, let me give my thoughts on it, because I gave you guys 5 reasons, but let me give you my thoughts. First and foremost, the runtime I had no problem with. Okay, I thought it really worked. Um, that car scene when you hear the engine rev up gives me goosebumps. That this movie does not disappoint. The only thing is this is an Elseworld Batman. Now, here's the thing. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I'll even go so far. And I think what you're talking about is the introduction of the Batmobile, right? The introduction of the Batmobile, because you know it's coming. And when, of course, they leave Penguin there and everything else. And by the way, um, it has its comedic moments, right? But when you hear that go and you're like, uh-oh, and then the lights flash, okay, and you know you're off to the races at that point, and it's just so well done. Um, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Now, as far as being an Elseworld Batman, I don't know what they're going to do about the whole DC thing, but that will be very interesting. It's going to depend on what they do in the Batman Part Two. It really is. Are they going to put Patterson um, into this particular um, universe, if you will? But so the first thing I'll say is this: I had no problem with the runtime. Runtime worked. Okay. Um, so I had no problem. It was 3 hours. I mean, look, Dune was 3 hours, and I said it the other night. Dune is one of the best paced films I've ever seen in my life. Dune Part Two was one of the best paced films I've ever seen in my life. And by the way, guys, okay, this is the same DP. It's the same cinematographer. So when you see that at the end of the movie, just know it's the same thing. Okay. So I didn't have a problem with the runtime. I loved, as I said, going back to it, it's a different perspective. We're not talking about um, Batman 25 years later or whatever else. This is a young Batman. He's still trying to figure things out. Then on top of that, you have the grounded villain. Love the Riddler. He's the only villain you can really compare that to the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker. Um, and it worked. It all worked. Now people say, "Well, it fell off on the third act." Not really. Not really. I mean, once they get into the garden and everything else, you could say that, but it's still he's remember the Riddler's locked up at this point, okay? But it's a different movie. So, he has all his henchmen, and that's when Batman, once again, world's greatest detective, he's the one that figures the password out, and he knows what's coming. And of course, by that time, the explosion happens. But it's just so well done on so many different levels. Um, this, I think, is one of the greatest Batman movies. And on you could ask me tomorrow. I mean, I still think it's a coin flip. It's a coin flip between the Batman and the Dark Knight. It's just like with Spider Man. Is it No Way Home or is it Spider Man 2? I mean, they're right there. So, but the Batman is just it was just a great film. It was just a great, solid, quality film, and I loved it. So hard to believe it's already 2 years old, But it just worked all the way around. So, and Patterson, I mean, even take a look at this shot here, right? The only thing you see is his eye, and then he's got a little, facial hair, okay, on the side, a little, yeah, and it's like he's still learning, right? He's still learning, and yeah, so it worked. It worked all the way around. So that is the Batman. Um, okay, guys, coming up, couple of things. First and foremost, um, I am going to get this uploaded, and then what I'm going to do is I promised you guys a new. I promised you guys a new perfect movie, and I'm going to deliver. So that being said, Skyfall is going to be the perfect movie for March. I sat down, I watched it, I've got all the notes ready to go. There's not a bad thing wrong with Skyfall, not at all. I have one little minor detail, but that's it. It's a perfect Bond film, um, and a perfect movie. That's why I'm doing it for the perfect movie series. So that's going to be coming up either today or tomorrow. So check that out. Then for March, I know we're a couple days in March. Excuse me, tomorrow. Um, I am going to be sitting down and talking about Iron Man, the film that started the whole thing, the film that started the whole MCU back in 08. And it's just incredible to think we're, 16 years in, over 30 movies, 16 years in. And that's what I'm going to be doing, guys, for the whole rest of March, is going to be talking about Marvel films. I'm going to give you guys, excuse me, I'm going to be giving you guys all of the best Marvel films to start. And then we'll do second tier stuff later on. But I'm talking about the Avengers. I'm talking about Iron Man. I'm talking about Infinity War. I'm talking about Civil War. I'm talking about Endgame. So things like that. And then, Winter Soldier, which I have done for the Perfect Movie series. And you guys can go check that out. And then I'll leave the little link up there. I'm going to redo Winter Soldier for you guys for March. And then, yeah, it's going to be all Marvel, all March. So, but yeah. So I am going to be doing Skyfall. And, so all that being said, guys, and Dadpool, I know I call you are a fantastic, loyal member, and I say thank you every time, and you deserve it. Guys, memberships. Now you're saying, oh, why should we give you money? First and foremost, you're not going to give me money. Okay? It's absolutely free. Okay? I made this as cheap. You can't go wrong here. Okay? I made this absolutely as cheap as possible. Okay? First and foremost, I have 3 levels. The first level is $2.99 a month. The second level is $6.99, $5.99 a month, $5 or $6.99 a month, and the highest level I have is $10 a month. Now, here's the thing: the first month is completely free. So what I tell people is, if you don't, subscribe, first of all, try the membership out. Okay, it's completely free. It's not going to cost you a dime. If you don't like it, then you don't have to keep it. Okay, you're not losing anything. Okay, but if you do like the content, what it would do for me is it would help me out immensely. Okay, it would help me provide you with better content. Okay, and it's just one of those things where I'm able then to get better equipment for the show. I'm able to get better guests. I'm able to actually make this channel as the best I absolutely can. All that being said, my goal at the end of this year, fingers crossed, is to have 2,000 subscribers, hashtag road to 2,000, and 15 to 20 paid subscribers. And what that's going to do, it's going to help me get you better content. Okay? The perfect, there's so much content out there, guys, right now. It's not behind a paywall either. Keep that in mind. Netflix just raised their prices. Okay? Netflix just raised their prices again. Again. For $9.99 a month to help me out, you're getting all of the things on the Perfect Movie series. Anatomy of a Movie. Thursday, I'm going to be sitting down with Matthew Anderson. Second annual Real Talks Oscar prediction show. Okay? We've got interviews on there from people like Ryan McQuaid, Phil Walsh. Okay? All these fantastic interviews. Not to mention, you're getting all the retrospectives, the spoiler casts. You can't get anywhere. Try getting all this content for $10 a month. I dare you. I dare you. You can't. All that being said, guys, nothing is behind a paywall. And I won't. But what I will ask is for you guys to A, like and subscribe to content, which is completely free. B, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video like this, like the Perfect Movie Series, like the Anatomy of Movie Series, like the Retrospectives. And C, if you really want to, you can help me out. And this is my dream of making videos full time. This is a side hustle for me right now. I'm able to do this because I have a couple days off and everything else. I'm going to be recording a lot of stuff over the next few days. So when I am at work, you guys are going to be getting content. And it's going to keep this up. Because I know with all of the likes, okay, that puts it out there. And when it puts it out there, more eyeballs are on it. When more eyeballs are on it, more people see it. They hit the like and subscribe button, and then it grows the channel. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm looking to do, is grow the channel. And I have so many different plans for so many different videos, okay, that I got to get them all straight sometimes. I want to start working. I wanted to do this. I'm going to do Skyfall today. Then tomorrow is going to be Iron Man. Then Thursday is going to be Infinity War. And I've got so much stuff planned for the channel, guys. So it's not going to cost you a dime. Not for the first month. Hit that join button. Hit that join button. And like I said, if you don't like it, you don't have to stay subscribed to it. But if you do, it will help me out immensely. So that's my bargain, my plea for money. Okay, I'm trying to be. Yes, I know it's tough. I know it's tough, guys. Even $3 a month. Even $3 a month is very helpful. Is very helpful, and so. But I've got so much stuff planned for this channel, guys. Stay tuned. And I'm not even talking about covering all of the movies. Part 2 was the first movie I did for 2024. I'm going to be covering all these movies, whether it is The Fall Guy, whether it is Civil War, whether it is, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes movie. All of these movies I'm going to be covering. I'm going to be doing spoiler casts. So there's a lot coming up, guys. Stay tuned. That's all I can say. So that is going to do it for me for right now. Okay. I am going to come back. It's 2:15 here Pacific time. I'm going to say probably 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock Pacific time, 8 Eastern. I'll put out a tweet. This is more of a spur of the moment type of thing. And I am going to do Skyfall. So stay tuned for that. And then, like I said, guys, we got so much stuff coming up with the channel. So it's crazy. So as always, do the 3 things that you need to do. Be safe, be careful, and have a great rest of the day. I am David Steele, and you have been watching Real Talks. Bye-bye.